Shabbat Shalom. I'm Robert Barr, and this
Shabbat
is
Shalom.
Jay Gilbert, a member of Congregation Beth Adam, and involved with ourjewishcommunity.org. We're delighted you're here. We're going to have a great conversation. We're going to start that in a few minutes, but we're going to begin by opening with a reading. If you want to start, Jay.
Sure. Put away the pencil and paper. Put away the notebook and keys. Set aside the shovel and hammer. Rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no working, no laboring, no straining, not living in the past, not planning for the future.
This is a time for celebration, for joy, for mirth. We are here alive to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and friends with no distractions. We touch and are touched, the great gift of the Sabbath. So we're here at ourjewishcommunity.org that's based in Loveland, Ohio, and Jay has been a member of our congregation for
30-some years.
30-some years. We were both like 6 when you were 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have been 7, or you were 7 and I was 6 when you came up.
He was ordained when he was 4.
I was a very precocious child.
Mm-hmm.
But ourjewishcommunity.org, for those of you who've joined us through ourjewishcommunity.org and online, you might not realize or remember that Congregation Beth Adam, which spawned ourjewishcommunity.org, has been in Cincinnati or Greater Cincinnati for over 30 years. We're actually getting ready to celebrate our 36th anniversary as a congregation. And it's been a dynamic place. We started out with a vision of creating a bold voice of Judaism that spoke to who we are as 21st century Jews. And back then it was 20th century Jews. Wow, we've gone through 2 centuries. And we've recreated liturgy, what we say, that it gives expression to who we are. We recognize that our ancestors got to write what they believe. They gave voice to their religious ideas and ideals in a language that spoke to who they were and the universe that they understood. And that we have that same right, and in fact it's a responsibility to give voice to who we are so that the next generations after us inherit the best that we have to offer. So that's what we've been doing here. Jay's been involved in that. And then, but more than just that, just doing the bricks and mortar, when technology really began to say there's another way, a louder microphone, we could talk to more people. And we know that a lot of the kids that actually grew up here who are no longer living in Greater Cincinnati, that they wanted to remain connected. And there are people around the world who liked what we were doing and found our voice interesting. We started to use technology as a way to share what we were doing here, to spread beyond the walls of our sanctuary here in Loveland, Ohio. So that's what this is about. Some of our services are live at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Friday and Shabbat. And this one is pre-recorded. You're probably doing something else right now, knowing you and knowing what you do. We'll talk about that in a second. So I pre-record some of the services because I think it's important for you to have an opportunity, you who join us online, and to meet members of Beth Adam and you new people who may be coming through Cincinnati who aren't available at 6 o'clock, but who want to participate in our streaming services. We'll post this as if it's live. That means you can chat on the side and communicate with each other. If I can, I'll be tuning in. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But whether you watch it live or in archives, we are a community that gives voice to our Jewish identity as modern Jews, a bold Judaism. And I'm glad you're here sharing this service with us. So we're going to continue with our candle lighting.
Okay. On this Shabbat, we create our moment in time. We pause to reflect upon our yesterdays and tomorrows, to renew our ties with our families and friends, to restore our energies, to refresh our spirits. As the sun descends and shadows lengthen, the distractions of the day give way to the stillness of night. It is time now for us to see not with our eyes, but with our hearts and minds. As the day gives way to evening, it is time for us to welcome the Shabbat.
The candles stand before us, waiting to be lit. We recall our ancestors as we too seek to dispel the darkness and banish the cold, to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes. May the dancing flames of the candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our minds, and passion in our spirits. Baruch ha'or ba'olam. Blessed is the life within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam. Blessed is the life within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'Shabbat. Blessed is the light of the Sabbath. Perfect. So, I am glad that Jay Gilbert is joining me for services tonight. If you watched a couple weeks ago, you probably, if you didn't, go back to January 1st is when Jay was on with me, and you can watch that. We had a different conversation. Obviously, we don't just simply repeat conversations. And if you weren't here, I'll let you know that Jay is a radio DJ. You know, it's quickly, how long have you been a radio DJ?
I've been a radio DJ since Woodstock.
Since Woodstock.
Yeah.
Wow.
I tell people that I was the first person at my radio station to play Stairway to Heaven.
Really?
And they go, they're that old?
Yeah.
So
Wow. And you're in Cincinnati, but you didn't start. Did you start in Cincinnati?
no, I grew up in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I went to college at Penn State University, which is not University of Pennsylvania, which is in Philadelphia. But Penn State University is in the center of Pennsylvania, which is where Joe Paterno was from.
Okay.
And I went to the college radio station there, and I got my first paying job at the local radio station there.
Mm-hmm. And then did you come to Cincinnati right after that?
Yes, I did. That was in the mid-'70s, and it's pretty unusual. Most people who are radio DJs are very nomadic.
Right.
And they'll give you a list of 14 radio stations they've worked at. Mm-hmm. My list is a lot smaller. I got a job at Cincinnati radio station, and there was a time when I left that radio station, and I did work other places, but I came back to that station, and I've spent most of my professional career at one radio station.
Wow. Right. I always think of WKRP in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Was not filmed here other than the opening shot. No. And if you've never seen that TV show, but I remember Johnny Fever, the DJ, at one point listing all the different names he had gone by. Right. You've always gone by Jago, have you?
One thing I tell people is that I've been in radio so long that my real name is the name I use on the radio.
It's great. So I asked Jay, if you saw the service Jay and I talked about his involvement in Congregation Beth Adam, and particularly our Jewish community creating the videos. That's a lot of what you've been involved in. But But I asked Jay, because you've talked at Adult Education on Sunday mornings about Jews in the media, and I thought, you're a rock and roll DJ. You mean you Stairway to Heaven and Led Zeppelin and all those folks. And I thought maybe, a lot of us grew up with rock and roll. And just what insight? Certainly, the question I said I was going to ask you first was Jews in rock and roll. How many are there? I mean,
not a whole lot. Not a whole lot in front of the microphone and the camera, but a whole lot behind the microphone and the camera.
So let's talk about in front of the microphone.
Right now, one of the most popular performers is Adam Levine.
Okay, help me.
Maroon 5.
Okay.
A host in the TV show The Voice.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Sure, that I...
And many people at this moment might be throwing something at the computer going, he's not rock and roll at all.
Right.
But he is in a band with a bunch of guys that have guitars.
So that makes
which is close enough.
Yeah.
Because actual rock and roll is not as dominant a form of music as it used to be.
Really? So what is it?
If you look at the Billboard music charts,
I have to say I have not.
You don't do that?
Yes, I do. Along with best-selling books in the New York Times, I go to the Billboard charts.
There is almost no rock music
really
that is there. I always laugh because I think there's never been a time when I don't hear more often that someone is treated like a rock star than now, when there are way fewer rock stars in the world than there used to be.
Wow. So that's just this is my ignorance. So what's so rock and roll? Difference between rock and roll and music we're listening to now.
Well, think of the most famous names in music now, whether you know their music or not. The names that you see and hear: Taylor Swift, now rock and roll; Katy Perry, all the hip hop artists,
Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, Miley Cyrus. A lot of our artists you've never heard of, like The Weeknd. Hip hop is very big, and pop music is very big, and dance music is very big, and electronic music is very big, and a bunch of guys with long hair and guitars. There's very few of them.
Wow. Okay. So so who plays? So I think of Kiss. Isn't there something Jewish about Kiss?
Yes.
I mean, that was the one.
And Kiss is still out there, and they're on tour.
Are they?
But their peak years were 1975 to 85.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
They're a nostalgia band. Yeah, they are.
But they still dress up like.
Yeah, they are, and that is an exception to what I said about that there aren't many people in front who are Jewish. The guy, most of the guys in Kiss are Jewish, and the guy that is in charge of Kiss, Gene Simmons, was born in Israel. His name is I think Chaim Vitz.
Okay. Yeah, some of the kids that went in bar mitzvah class, it's one of the things, Rabbi Bar, can I write my paper about a Jewish music? And, they always, Gene Simmons gets somehow, I force them to write about sort of the bigger scope of Jewish music. But, yeah, Gene Simmons always seemed to slip in there. And it's the only reason I knew that.
Right. And briefly, his story was he was born in Israel, but he came to America when he was about 8 or 9.
Okay.
And before that time, the story he tells is that I grew up not in a religious family, but still surrounded by a very closed world that was not exposed to popular culture or anything like that. So when he came to America and saw all of that, he was totally blown away by it and said, I want that. Wow. And he got it.
Were they one of the first? Well, I guess Alex Cooper maybe. Is that where? Did he dress up? I don't remember if Alice Cooper dressed up, but I think
Alice Cooper did wear makeup and costumes, and a lot of people will credit Alice Cooper with being the person who started what was then called theater rock, where instead of just guys standing there and playing and singing, he tried to do other things and more makeup and sometimes would do little narratives on stage. And Alice Cooper did start that, but Kiss did something very different with the huge makeup and the pyrotechnics and just over the top garish stuff. They took it to another level.
Wow. So are there any other, before we talk about behind the microphone, are there other Jews in front of the microphone we should think about?
Just to set the record straight, one of them is not Bruce Springsteen, even though his name sounds Jewish.
Right, and he came from Jersey.
Right.
But there's certainly Jews who sang,
his drummer Max Weinberg is Jewish.
Wow. Remember that is a good trivia question.
Okay.
That's interesting.
And I should have boned up on this a little bit more. There are some, but not many.
Right. So, but there are more Jews behind that, sort of in the production, and we were talking about sort of Jewish and Cincinnati because that's where we're based. So that's a little bit sort of talk about a niche.
The music business, which is part of the larger media business, as we all know, is controlled by the Jews.
That was a joke.
Well, it's.
But there are a lot of Jews involved.
That's not right. The joke is that they're all coordinated to take over the world.
Right.
But the truth is that a very large percentage of people in the entertainment business are Jewish. Yes.
And the reason is, and actually there is a reason for that. And it's interesting because I remember when I started doing, there was a book about this, and I actually taught about it. Early on, entertainment was considered an immoral business, and it wasn't considered a good business.
It was vulgar.
It was vulgar, and absolutely. And if you look at the movies, a lot of the people who were involved in the movies, certainly the big productions, they weren't allowed in mainstream culture. But what was and the reason a lot of the agents and lawyers were Jewish is because the story is there was a Jewish lawyer who couldn't get a job in a mainstream law firm in L.A., opened his own. The other Jewish folks involved in media came to him, so it grew. They created their own country club because they weren't allowed in the mainstream country clubs. And there's been some interesting pieces written about it that sort of MGM and some of the other Jews who were involved were creating our image of what American culture was, even though they weren't allowed in American culture. And one of the first, and there's been many essays that I've come across about the jazz singer, Al Jolson, that it was a minority playing a minority figure, and they've written about that. About what was that? What did it speak to about American culture? So the Jews were in the media was not that it was a function of they couldn't get jobs elsewhere, and there was a lot of control. Plus, you didn't need money to get started as an entertainer. You stood up and you talked, a comedian or a singer.
And it really goes back to before movies, vaudeville.
Right.
The administration and the business of vaudeville, not necessarily all the performers, was Jewish again because that was considered a very low.
Right.
Vulgar business.
Right, and so people went into it. because they could do it.
Right.
They wouldn't get.
And when the movies began, a lot of people may not remember this or even know this.
I don't remember when movies began.
Right.
I remember when DVDs began.
Right. When movies began, they were not 90-minute, 2-hour feature films
Right.
that happened in large theaters. They were things that were maybe 7 or 8 minutes long, and there was a collection of those things. There were no movie theaters. Actual theaters did vaudeville. They didn't have movie screens in them. And so the first movies were literally in the back rooms of butcher shops and hardware stores. They would clear a space out, and people would come in. And these would be in immigrant neighborhoods,
Right.
considered bad neighborhoods. So it was considered something to look down upon. And people who were well-to-do and in the business world didn't even want to deal with it. They had no idea it was going to grow into what it was.
Right.
And so they ignored it. And so the Jews saw the opportunity first.
Right. What's interesting is, and this is certainly, we're talking about Jews in music or Jews in media, but it's interesting, a lot of times when you look at sort of the trajectory of the Jewish economics, is as Jews, we weren't allowed in certain mainstream businesses, so we were all in parallel businesses. So the scrap business was very Jewish, because they weren't allowed in big manufacturing, but they recognized, the Jewish community recognized, some people did,
That the cast-offs of
whether it was the metal, so all of a sudden it's called a Jewish business in the sense of they weren't allowed in mainstream. So growing up in Detroit, if you looked at the history of the car industry, there were very few Jews, very few, if any Jews, in the car industry growing up in the 20s and 30s. But people got into scrap because the leftovers in the 40s and 50s were scrap, even the 60s and 70s. Same kind of deal. So entertainment was like that. Early on, medicine was like that. Medicine was not considered a good field because it was around death. And so a lot of Jews went into it, plus you could be self-employed because of anti-Semitism. So it's interesting how certain sort of industries get sort of shaped by all kinds of industry. Actually, basketball early on was Jewish too. There was early and boxing, because also sports where you didn't need a lot of accoutrements, you could just get into it. So, but you were going to talk about, I had mentioned a teaser a little bit ago about Jews and Cincinnati and music in the back. So what's the most famous Jewish guy in Cincinnati and music?
Well, he's
who we wouldn't know.
Right. He's emblematic of something that was larger, that was not just Cincinnati and was not Jewish. We live in a time now where the music business and the recording business has consolidated, and there are basically 3 record companies in the world now, and they operate with a lot of labels, more labels than that. But it's a very consolidated and concentrated international business now. But of course, when you go back close to 100 years now, there were dozens of record companies, independent ones, all around the country, and there was also the wide variety of music in America was happening independently. And what I mean by that is the mainstream record companies, Columbia Records, Capitol Records, Mercury Records, they handled the performers for mainstream, what I would have to call white bread America. The Frank Sinatras and Rosemary Clooney's.
Who's is also from Greater Cincinnati.
Right.
Rosemary Clooney.
Right.
Throw that out.
Right. But that kind of music, what you would call, the music of that era, the big bands, stuff like that was handled by the large record company. There was a whole other American music that was happening at the same time underneath that. What we now call country and western music, or country music. That was called country and western. Before that, it was called hillbilly music. What we now call rhythm and blues, or hip hop, was rock and roll. Before that, it was rhythm and blues. And back in the 1930s, those records made by black people were called race records. And the larger record companies would have subsidiaries that might do a lot of that, but there was also a whole string in cities all over America, mostly in the mid to smaller cities like Cincinnati, who would record these regional artists doing that kind of non-mainstream music, and they had very successful businesses because there were millions of people who were not interested in Frank Sinatra and Benny Goodman and stuff like that, but they were interested in in more regional music that was closer to their lives. And one of those companies was here in Cincinnati. It was called King Records, and it was run by this Jewish guy named Sid Nathan. And it was a very successful and significant record company, I'd say, from the 1940s through the 1960s.
Biggest artist? That we would know.
The most familiar name you'd know from King Records is James Brown. He got his big break.
Really?
He came from a little town in Georgia, and I think his first record contract was with an even smaller record company.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was traveling what was then called the Chitlin Circuit, playing small black venues around the country, he was starting to get noticed. And he almost did get signed to a larger record company based in Chicago called Chess Records. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're pretty significant. Company that they launched Chuck Berry.
Oh, really? Wow.
And a lot of rhythm and blues artists. He almost got signed by them, but somebody working for Sid Nathan managed to get his hands on James Brown first. And James Brown's very first records that got noticed by America in general were recorded in Cincinnati.
Wow.
In neighborhood called Evanston, right next door to Norwood.
Right, sure, I know exactly.
And,
I don't live too far from there.
And I could roll through some of the titles from some of his first hits that were recorded in Cincinnati. And his real breakthrough was an album he made, a live album called James Brown Live at the Apollo.
Which is Apollo's in New York.
Right, the
Harlem.
Apollo's in Harlem. When he got that gig, he wanted to make an album of it. And Sid Nathan said, I'm not going to pay for that. I'm not going to pay for engineering and recording, remote studio to go to New York City. And no, I'm not going to do that. So James Brown paid for it himself.
Wow. But he was still under the label. So he had...
But it had to be released on King Records.
Wow.
Let me tell you a funny story.
Okay.
It's not Jewish, but it's not a well-known story, but it's just great.
You heard it here first if you haven't heard. Okay.
It's James Brown Live at the Apollo, and in fact, I'm pretty sure the entire album is on YouTube if you want to go listen to it. And when you listen to it, one of the things that James Brown did that certainly white America was not familiar with was a much more audience-involved concert, call and response.
Right,
There's a lot of that going on. Well, the crew that he hired in New York was not aware of that and was not prepared for that. And they mic'd him and they mic'd his band, but they didn't mic the audience. And so when they brought the tapes back to Cincinnati, James Brown would say, I want to hear you scream. Nothing. They screamed, but the mics didn't pick up.
Sure.
Sid Nathan said, I'm not going to put that out. That sounds stupid. The engineer said, I got an idea. I know a local disc jockey who does sock hops on Saturday nights, and I know he's doing one this Saturday night. Let's take our gear over there, and let's have him coach the kids, tell them scream this, scream that, stuff like that. We'll bring it back, and we'll put it on there. And he did. And if you go to YouTube and listen to that album, James Brown says, I want to hear you scream, and they all scream. That's a bunch of white kids on the west side of Cincinnati, and not a bunch of people in Harlem.
See, this is why you participate in ourjewishcommunity.org. Not only is our Jewish community pushing the envelope Jewishly, exploring new we are telling you stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else about ethic or entertainment and knowledge, and this is why we have.
And the ultimate punchline is that album was the crossover break for James Brown, and was the best-selling album in the history of King Records.
Wow! And King Records went out of business
in the early '70s. I guess.
Right, and the building is actually, we were talking about this before we started getting ready for services, that they're trying to put a plaque there. They're trying to sort of keep the building alive, even though most of us don't even know. I mean, I know it's in Evanston somewhere. I have no idea where it is. And is there anything to see if you would go there?
There's not. The problem was a highway came through that neighborhood, and the street that it was on turned into a dead-end street.
Oh, okay. So now I do know where it is.
Yeah, and that's why. And that's why that happened. King Records, and again, this is just something that happened with a lot of these small regional record companies. James Brown was the biggest name to come out of there, but a lot of very famous songs were originally recorded by artists on King Records. Most notably, "The Twist" by Chubby Checker was actually a cover of a song done by a guy named Bill Doggett on King Records. There are many other songs that were recorded on King Records.
Would that be online? Bill Doggett singing?
Oh, absolutely. But again, you'll find other small regional record companies that did songs that other artists turned into bigger hits.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Thanks. This is and Jay's when you've done this at Adult Education, and you've done a bigger program like this. It's interesting because you being in the business and having a sort of being around it and hearing it and remembering it.
I have to correct something. Bill Doggett did a song called Fingertips that was made famous by Stevie Wonder later. The guy who did the twist, I'm drawing a blank on that, but it wasn't Bill Doggett.
But okay, so here's my music Jewish connection. So some of you may have. A couple months ago was the Stevie Wonder singing "Someday at Christmas" was the Apple song. The guy who wrote the music, guy named Brian Wells, played at my bar mitzvah.
All right.
And Brian he actually performs in New York. Brian's written some other music. You can look Brian Wells up, and but he was a Detroiter. And had a band in Detroit and played, and so I keep on going. So I'm like one phone call from Stevie Wonder. I figure. Does that?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And as long as we're doing that, we should also mention that one of the very biggest songs of the year 2000,
2000
or 2001 was it?
I don't know.
Was Smooth.
Oh, Smooth, sure. Oh, absolutely. That's right. Thank you. Written by Atal Shur, performed by
was Rob
Santana.
Rob Thomas. Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20.
I'm sorry.
Rob Thomas was the lead singer of a group called Matchbox 20,
Okay.
which is why he got the gig to be the vocalist on that song with Carlos Santana called Smooth,
Written. Okay.
whose melody was written by Atal Shur, who's from Cincinnati. He was a piano player for our choir at one time.
He played for the choir. That's right. And what was funny, and Atal and his dad actually wrote some of the music. If you joined us for streaming High Holiday services, some of the music was written by Atal's father, Bonya. I think when he accepted the music award, he thanked Bonya, his dad, and Atal. I used to pick him up because he also used to play at bar and bat mitzvahs. And some mornings when we had a bar mitzvah, to be pounding on it. Wake up! Come on, we got to go to work.
He got a Grammy for that.
Grammy. So
We're one of the few people who, when we've watched the Grammys and seen somebody come and accept the award, we know that guy.
we know that guy. He played for our choir. So interesting. This is great. It's a lot of fun. This is where you take a topic, you sort of explore it, you open it up, you look at it, you begin to understand that aspects of it that maybe we didn't know, a little bit of insight. So I really appreciate this that you've joined us. We're going to continue with our challah reading, and then we'll make a couple announcements.
Okay. As the fingers of the challah intertwine, so do we join hands in our common humanity, sharing the fruits of our labors. We cherish that which has been created through human effort. For it is through the work of our hands, the strength of the human spirit, the vision of our minds, that our dreams are woven into the tapestry of time. We celebrate the accomplishments of yesterday and today, anticipating the possibilities of tomorrow. May the sharing of this challah strengthen our bonds with others who walk upon this earth.
Baruch HaMalkapenu, blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Hazon Hadam, blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch Lechem Haaretz, blessed is the bread of the earth. And then if you have some juice or some wine, please join me. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and the bounty of nature as we lift the cup. For we're part of nature which gave us birth and continues to sustain us. Even as we depend upon nature, so do we influence its course. Through the search for understanding, we've gained the knowledge to shape our world. Guided by the best of human wisdom and the compassion of our spirit, we accept the responsibility which rests upon us. May the taste of the wine or juice upon our lips stir within us a reverence for nature and a respect for human endeavor. Bruchim hachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim hachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within each person. So we say l'chaim, to life.
Okay.
I was going to start singing l'chaim, but I know there was a revival this year of Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway. So maybe we'll do that one day. We'll do that as a short. We'll sing that.
Okay.
I want to thank Jay for joining us. If you didn't see Jay in the service in January, you may not know that Jay also does UncleJayExplains.com, explains the news. You don't do it anymore, but there's 5 years worth of very humorous, cute, funny, educational videos. Jay's also done the videos, our Hanukkah video and our Rosh Hashanah video recently, but he also did Uncle Jay Explains the High Holidays and Uncle Jay Explains Passover. Take a look at those and enjoy. And that's part of what we do is often we try to create new things here. As I said, this was a recorded service. Jay actually is on the radio usually at this time right now. Jay's actually in. This is where technology, you really are in 2 places at once right now.
That's true.
You could actually probably be in 3 places at once if you pre-recorded.
Right now I'm on the radio, and possible that particular segment I might have pre-recorded also. So I might be in 3 places.
Yeah, technology is an amazing tool. So we're doing that. So I'm glad you're here pre-recorded. Next week, February 12th, will be a live service, not pre-recorded. It will also be a service when we'll read memorial names. So if you have names of deceased loved ones that you'd like to include in the service, please email them to me at rabbi@ourjewishcommunity.org. Or when Wednesday or Thursday, typically we post the upcoming service, you can include the names there. Either way, on the 12th, we will be reading names of loved ones. Check out our Facebook page. That's a place to always stay in touch with what we're doing. We keep on posting materials there. Go to our website, ourjewishcommunity.org. Stay in touch. Write me. Let me know what you're thinking. Leave comments during the service. That's always a great way. We can communicate that way as well. So I'm delighted you're here. I'm delighted that you've been here with me as well. And we close with our final words. May we know blessings those who are near, and may we know blessings those who are far. And may the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.